Good evening. Welcome to a special edition of Inside City Hall for Thursday, September 26, 2024. I'm Errol Louis. Mayor Eric Adams is under indictment, facing federal charges that he took bribes and illegal campaign contributions from foreign nationals in exchange for favors, including helping Turkish officials get fire safety approvals for a new consulate building in Manhattan. The 5-count indictment lays out a decade-long trail of alleged crimes.
The conduct alleged in the indictment, the foreign money, the corporate money, the bribery, the years of concealment, is a grave breach of the public's trust. Public office is a privilege. We allege that Mayor Adams abused that privilege and broke the law. Laws that are designed to ensure that officials like him serve the people, not the highest bidder, not a foreign bidder, and certainly not a foreign power.
But Mayor Adams is defiantly fighting the charges, declaring his innocence and resisting many calls for him to resign. He is expected to appear in federal court tomorrow.
I look forward to defending myself and defending the people of this city, as I've done throughout my entire professional career.
We have special team coverage on all of this for you tonight, all around the city and down to Washington, D.C. We begin tonight with Ayanna Harry, who is outside the courthouse at Federal Plaza. Good evening, Ayanna.
Good evening, Errol. While the mayor says he is focused on serving the city, federal investigators have been focused on Eric Adams, finding the mayor accepted bribes and illegal campaign contributions. And tonight, this federal investigation is far from over.
It's an unfortunate day, and it's a painful day.
Public office is a privilege. We allege that Mayor Adams abused that privilege and broke the law.
A federal criminal case against the mayor of New York City focused on bribery, illegal campaign contribution, and an alleged cover-up.
The foreign money, the corporate money, the bribery, the years of concealment, is a grave breach of the public's trust.
For the first time in more than 150 years, a sitting New York City mayor has been indicted. Eric Adams faces 5 federal criminal charges, including bribery and wire fraud. Adams is accused of receiving more than $100,000 worth of luxury travel from Turkish officials and businessmen, all looking to establish influence with Adams as he rose in New York City politics.
He told the public he received no gifts, even though he was secretly being showered with them.
U.S. Attorney Jumaane Williams says in exchange for some of those gifts, Mayor Adams,
he intervened in the New York City Fire Department's inspection process for a building owned and operated by the Turkish government, allowing it to open even though it had not passed the fire inspection.
Investigators found Adams sought and accepted illegal contributions from corporations, foreign donors, and wealthy businessmen. The indictment reads, one businessman agreed to contribute $50,000 or more to the 2021 campaign, believing that Adams might one day be the president of the United States. The mayor is further accused of taking in $10 million from the city's public campaign finance program that his campaign did not qualify for.
I ask New Yorkers to wait to hear our defense before making any judgments.
Hours after federal investigators showed up to seize more evidence from Gracie Mansion Thursday morning, the mayor stood outside his official residence with local leaders, telling reporters his focus will remain on leading the city, with protesters just a few feet away.
You don't get to talk. No. You don't get to talk.
Later in the day, the mayor's attorney, Alex Spiro, insisted
they left out something very important, something you will soon see, which is that there are emails with Mayor Adams telling this staffer, telling all of them, do not take foreign money, period.
According to the indictment, Mayor Adams and his staffers tried to cover up their activity. One staffer is accused of going to the bathroom during a meeting with the FBI and deleting the encrypted app she used to send the mayor messages. And after the mayor turned over his cell phone to the FBI last fall, the indictment says the mayor claimed he forgot the password to unlock it.
This investigation continues. We continue to dig, and we will hold more people accountable.
And the U.S. Attorney's Office has a message now for the public. If you have information about Mayor Eric Adams that could be helpful for their investigation, they want to hear from you. Meanwhile, Adams continues to insist he is innocent. Errol?
And so, Ayanna, I know they didn't take questions at the press conference, but there is an open question out there about whether or not the aides, the fundraiser, and at least one staff member, whether or not they were cooperating, whether or not they too are under legal scrutiny and perhaps going to be indicted, right?
Absolutely, Errol. We're going to have to continue to pay close attention to this case to get those answers. But you heard at the very end of my story, U.S. Attorney Jumaane Williams said more people will be held accountable. Errol.
Okay, thanks very much, Ayanna. We're going to turn now to our Kelly Mena, who is inside City Hall with some reaction from lawmakers today. Good evening, Kelly.
Good evening, Errol. It's quiet now, but earlier today, City Hall was bustling with local lawmakers. Many of them had expected for Thursday to be a typical day at their stated meeting where they passed legislation into law, but that was quickly overshadowed by the indictment of the mayor. Many federal, state, and local lawmakers have started to call on the mayor to resign, but Council Speaker Adrienne Adams isn't one of them. Earlier today, she stopped short of asking Adams to step aside, but she did say that the allegations facing the mayor are deeply troubling.
I ask the mayor to seriously and honestly consider whether full attention can be given to our deserving New Yorkers who need our government to be sound and stable.
Other more progressive members of the city council, however, had different views. They called on the mayor to resign, joining those other New York lawmakers in calling on the mayor to step aside. They say that there are growing concerns that this indictment is going to be a distraction for the mayor.
I absolutely believe that he should resign. You know, we're seeing many people within his administration, the chancellor, police commissioners, either resigning or getting raided by the NYPD. This is delaying the progress that this city needs to make in order to support everyday New Yorkers.
New Yorkers are allowed to say, we put you here, but we no longer want you here because we're not getting what we were promised, right? We were promised a mayor who said, hey, I was once a cop. I'm going to go and hold the police accountable and change them from the inside, lead.
Now, some of the other city council members we spoke to off camera said that it's too soon for them to make a judgment whether they are standing by the mayor or asking him to resign. Speaker Adams earlier today did say, though, that the mayor, if he remains in his position, that she expects him to fully carry out his duties as the head of city government. Back to you, Errol.
So now, Kelly, did any of the council members want to go on camera and vocally say, you know, I support the mayor, and I think everybody should, you know, kind of back off and just go back to work?
No, there was none of that happening on camera earlier today, but I did speak to some more high-ranking city council members, and many of them were hesitant to go on camera, saying that this isn't the right time, that they wanted to see the legal proceedings play out, see where this goes before they're ready to make a decision whether they should call on the mayor to resign or maybe he will step down on his own. Many of them didn't want to be that one person or that city council member to continue that pile-on against the mayor. They said that he's presumed innocent and he has a right to defend himself in court.
Okay.
Errol.
Thanks very much, Kelly. Mayor Adams has given no indication that he plans to step down in the wake of today's federal indictment, but he may not have a choice. Our Bobby Kuza joins me now with more on the ways that Mayor Adams could be removed from office, who would replace him, and what would happen next. Good evening, Bob.
Good evening, Errol. I mean, we are in uncharted territory here. There's been so much focus on all the different calls for Mayor Adams to resign, but turns out there are a lot of other scenarios whereby he could be forced from office.
Mayor Adams says he's not going anywhere, but that's not entirely up to him. Under the city charter, the governor has the power to remove the mayor. Governor Hochul would have to present Adams with charges and give him an opportunity to be heard in his defense. In the meantime, she could suspend him for up to 30 days. Such a move would be unprecedented. Then Governor Franklin Delano Roosevelt did hold hearings, personally questioning Mayor Jimmy Walker, who was under a cloud of corruption. But Walker ultimately resigned and left the country. A separate provision of the charter allows for a so-called inability committee to vote for removal. It would consist of the city's corporation council council, a position currently vacant, plus the comptroller, council speaker, the longest-serving borough president, currently Donovan Richards of Queens, and a deputy mayor to be selected by the mayor. If 4 of them voted in favor, the city council could then remove Adams with a 2/3 vote. Comptroller Brad Lander hopes the mayor will step down before it comes to that.
If he doesn't, then of course these other mechanisms, which none of us were familiar with just a couple of days ago, will need to be considered.
Lander is second in the line of succession after Public Advocate Jumaane Williams. If Williams were to become mayor, he'd have to declare a special election to fill the job within 3 days. The election would then likely take place a little more than 80 days later. It would be nonpartisan, making for a potentially crowded field, and would be determined by ranked choice voting.
Now, if Jumaane Williams was to become the mayor temporarily, there would actually be some restrictions on what he can and can't do as mayor. For instance, he would have to be in that office for 9 days before he could approve or veto legislation. He also couldn't appoint or remove anyone from office. That's according to the city charter. Now, as for that inability committee that I talked about, 5 members, right? There's no corporation council right now, so that leaves 4. All 4 of them would have to vote to remove the mayor, and one of them would be a deputy mayor selected by the mayor. So we're probably not going to get a clean sweep of those 4 votes to remove him. So that seems like an unlikely scenario. I think right now the most likely scenario would be for the governor to take action. And right now we haven't really heard from her as to whether that's something she's considering.
That disability committee, just from the way you describe it, it sounds like it was intended for a different scenario, like the mayor becoming, say, ill or otherwise unable to carry out their duties.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. There's provisions in the city charter for the mayor to be inability that's temporary and an inability that's permanent. If it's temporary, the mayor actually has a chance to respond, right? He has a couple days to kind of plead his case. When it's permanent, though, there's no chance for the mayor to respond, and it's up to this committee and then to the city council.
Okay, and now we'll hear about what the governor is thinking, but these scenarios are not things that we've ever heard about. I mean, you've been doing this for years, all of us have, and this has just never come up.
Oh, and you heard Brad Lander himself. He said this is something none of us that knew anything about a couple of days ago. I mean, I literally hadn't heard of the inability committee until this morning. And,
yeah, he's on a committee and didn't know it, right?
And I've been doing this for, and also, by the way, you know, we talk about the line of succession. It's Jumaane Williams, the public advocate, and then the city comptroller. I actually thought, in my ignorance, that there was a whole long list of people, but that's it. There's only 2 people in the line of succession. If we somehow got beyond that, it would actually be up to a vote of the city council, a majority vote to decide whoever they wanted to put in as the temporary mayor.
Worth keeping in mind. Thanks very much, Bobby. Let's turn now to our State House reporter, Bernadette Hogan, who is outside Gracie Mansion. And Bernadette, what is Governor Hochul saying about all of this?
Well, Errol, the governor did respond earlier today. Up at an event in upstate New York, she said that she didn't have a chance to read the indictment as she had an event that was going on just as the U.S. attorney was reading out those charges. But we have not actually heard anything from the governor. I mean, it's just past 7 o'clock, and we have not heard an updated opinion from the governor as to, number one, what she thinks of the charges that the mayor is facing, but 2, whether or not she will utilize the powers authorized under the state constitution and the New York City charter. As Bobby just described, the governor does have pretty broad powers, both by the state and the city. She has the ability to determine whether or not she wants to remove a sitting mayor. Of course, to get to that level, the charges or the situation would have to be pretty serious. And right now, we don't know what exactly she's thinking. Earlier today, she did say, Errol, that she thinks the situation itself is serious, and she said that she's picking up cues from New Yorkers and that they are feeling anxious. But let's take a listen to what she had to say earlier today.
This is a very serious matter that is unfolding. As the governor of the state of New York, I have a unique responsibility here to make sure I do right by all people in this great state. And I also represent 8.3 million New Yorkers. When they elected me to be their governor, I became the governor of this entire state, including all the residents of New York City. And I want them to know this. I will be deliberative, I'll be thoughtful, but we're going to come to the right resolution on what to do in this moment.
Now, the governor, of course, has other considerations, such as the national elections that are coming up. The governor has been fighting what has appeared to be an uphill battle ever since 2022, when Republicans ended up taking seats from Democrats in key congressional districts that Governor Kathy Hochul has tried to become the face of, bringing Democrats back into a victory in those seats, especially the Hudson Valley and Long Island. The governor had a speaking role at the Democratic National Convention, so clearly eyes are on Governor Kathy Hochul, and that's maybe one of the reasons why she has proceeded with such caution. Also, as the governor said, she does represent New York City, and that is the largest portion of the voter base. So the governor is up for re-election in 2026. She is trying to tread lightly here, especially when dealing with constituencies that might not yet be sold on ditching Mayor Eric Adams, as he faces not just these charges, but also a re-election campaign, Errol.
Yeah, and Bernadette, just to make sure everybody's clear on this, this is not like firing the summer intern. I mean, governors cannot willy-nilly just remove, say, the mayor of New York City, and nothing remotely like that has ever happened in our state.
No, it's a very difficult process. Again, the governor would have to make the determination that she's bringing charges against the mayor. The mayor would then have the ability to review those charges with his attorneys, and then a trial of sorts would be set up. And now during this trial, this ability where the governor, or she can appoint a district attorney or independent lawyers to provide question and answer, she can put him on a hiatus. She can suspend the elected official for about 30 days, and then after which provide a determination. This has happened once before, or it almost happened, where Franklin Delano Roosevelt, he was the governor at the time in the 1930s. He was also running for president, and he had some trouble with New York City Mayor Jimmy Walker, part of Tammany Hall, who was facing allegations of corruption and doling out contracts, municipal contracts to friends. Jimmy Walker did not end up getting the boot from FDR, but he did resign before that could happen. And then, of course, going to other elected office, there has been a history of governors removing at least 3 borough presidents and 1 sitting sheriff. So it's happened before, but it's not something that is taken lightly. And, you know, we have not heard yet from Governor Kathy Hochul a more of a developed response. Now that the charges have become public, she has maintained that stance, again, the middle of the road, a neutral stance, saying, listen, I still have to work with the mayor of the city of New York. But now these charges that have been released today, the details in the indictment, are something that critics say she can't ignore, and she does need to respond to.
Okay, thanks very much for that very thorough report, Bernadette. I'm joined now in studio by our investigative reporter, Courtney Gross, who's been looking into how the mayor allegedly gamed the city's campaign finance system for his own political benefit. Good evening, Courtney.
Evening, Errol. We know that in New York City, we have a very generous campaign finance system, a public matching system that is 8-to-1. That means if you donate $100, then the city can potentially give you $800 back if it meets certain requirements. Well, according to this indictment, the mayor received $10 million as part of this public matching system for his 2021 campaign. What we don't know is how much of that matching dollar amount was funneled through 2 illegal mechanisms, according to the indictment, one of which would be straw donors, and the other of which would be donations from foreign nationals. Now, we heard from the mayor's criminal defense attorney just a short time ago at the beginning of the show, who said that they will eventually produce emails saying that the mayor had no idea that he was receiving money from foreign nationals. Well, the indictment allegedly would say otherwise. In fact, on page 15 of the indictment, it says that the mayor and his staffer at the time, Rana Abasova, who has since been put on leave from her job at City Hall, she had been communicating with Turkish nationals, in particular, people in Turkey who wanted to contribute to the mayor. This person, known as a promoter in the indictment, says, I want to give $100,000 somehow to the mayor's campaign. We know that is against the law and above campaign finance contribution limits. They discuss how that scheme could potentially work. They say, quote, do you have a chance to transfer that here, Abasova allegedly said. We can't do it while Eric is in Turkey. She goes back and allegedly asks the mayor if he is okay with accepting straw donors through this mechanism, through this scheme. And the indictment reads that Adams directed that the Adams staffer pursue the promoter's illegal scheme. So according to this indictment, the mayor knew that straw donors were happening, that they were being funneled through these illegal foreign nationals and through illegal contributions, which is obviously contradicting what the mayor's criminal defense attorney said today.
Right. So if it comes down to it, it would really be a question of, like, say this goes to trial, whether or not a jury potentially believes one version of these facts or a different version of the facts.
Yeah, and in the indictment, it's not just that particular instance, which goes back to June 2018, where they're talking about funneling this huge sum of money into the mayor's campaign. But the indictment goes through multiple instances and fundraisers over the course of several years related to the 2021 campaign. Even talks about the re-election campaign, the 2025 campaign, where the mayor or his staffers were meeting with Turkish nationals who were trying to get illegal contributions to the mayor, and there was some sort of sign-off there. The question is, why would Turkish nationals necessarily want to be giving or contributing to the mayor of New York City or the potential mayor of New York City at the time? And this indictment says that these business people in Turkey thought that the mayor was a rising star. Some of them said Mayor Adams could be president one day. So they clearly wanted to give him money, get in his favor, and potentially get some sort of favors from City Hall down the road, which is what the indictment says exactly.
Right. And you don't necessarily have to prove that if you're buying a politician, it is a crime whether or not that person actually does anything for you. And so that's something we should be pretty clear on. And lest anybody think that this was just about getting luxury travel, which is what's alleged here. This is what some of these foreign nationals did for then Borough President Eric Adams and later Mayor Eric Adams. There is a public sort of a theft component to this, where what is being alleged is that matching funds for some of these allegedly illegal contributions came out of the taxpayer's pocket.
Oh, right, that's right. I mean, the public matching fund gives you a whole lot of public taxpayer money, right? There's the 8-to-1 match. So you go out and raise $100 in small dollar donations, you get $800 in city matching funds. That's $800 of city taxpayer money. And so because as part of that matching funds program, you have to sign something that attests to the fact that this was all done legally, right? That you played by the rules. And Mayor Eric Adams got $10 million in matching funds for his 2021 campaign. And according to the indictment, that was essentially ill-gotten money because he had broken the rules along the way. So it remains to be seen whether there will be some mechanism for him to either be fined or for that money to, somehow have to be repaid, because $10 million, is certainly no chump change.
Okay, thank you both. I want to get a different perspective here. Earlier today, I spoke about Mayor Adams' indictment with Catherine Wild, the president and CEO of the nonprofit organization Partnership for New York City. Here's more of our interview. So, Kathy Wild, the partnership, you put out a statement earlier today, and it said in part, we must allow the legal process to take its course, including a full assessment of a substantive response from the mayor to the charges against him. I'm reading into that you don't feel necessarily like you've heard so much of a substantive response, at least not yet.
Not yet.
Okay. And the business community, which I've always thought of as part of the coalition that helped the mayor get elected and helped him govern for at least part of these first 3 years, they've got to be feeling a little disaffected, a little worried at this point.
I think that is very much the case. I mean, the main concern of the business community is the continuity of the city, the stability of the city, the fact that municipal services have to keep going. And so that's really the focus. It's less on the mayor and the politics surrounding the solutions to whatever is the solution than it is on making sure that we're providing the support for the 330,000 people that work for the city, for the leadership in the administration who have been doing, for the most part, a very professional, good job of pushing a strong agenda. And those are people that I work with every day, and I'm trying to reassure New Yorkers and our members, the business community, that the operations of the city is not dependent on one man, even if he's the mayor. Mm-hmm. It is a large team effort, and our city will continue to function. I have complete confidence.
Right. At the same time, I've met some of your members, and they are top executives, they are top managers, they run very large corporations in many cases, and I'm thinking most of them could not survive those kind of charges, right? Their boards or their ownership or somebody would make some pretty drastic moves, even in advance of a full legal process, right?
Well, we haven't had the charges for more than 8 hours yet, I don't think. So, and in terms of reading the indictment, obviously that was, it was chilling. It was distressing. You and I are both from Brooklyn, and I know have followed the mayor for many years, and it was just very disappointing to read what that said. At the same time, it's very important to give him an opportunity to respond. I don't think he'd seen it either. Mm-hmm. So it's something that, again, I think that it's a crisis for the city. I can't pretend that it isn't. It's certainly a crisis for his administration, but there are a lot of strong people there who can pull together and hopefully pull us through. And in fact, the business community really, the larger business community of the city, met the mayor after the primary. When he was effectively on his way into office. Mm-hmm. And I made a lot of those introductions to people in business. He had a very good message for stabilizing the city after the pandemic, both from a public safety standpoint and from welcoming business support, economic growth. So he won them over, but it wasn't a long relationship. So obviously that makes it at this point just, very uncertain.
It seems from what we saw at the press conferences, some of the statements that the mayor has made so far, including on social media, that he wants to, and it's understandable from a legal standpoint, put the best face on it, act as if everything's okay, he's going to continue, he's going to do the job, and so forth and so on. But we don't want to sort of fuel an illusion, right? I mean, it's in his best interest to act as if everything's fine and he's going to work every day. But do you believe that that's true?
Well, I'm sure he's going to work. I think, though, that the morale of his people has got to be very impacted by this, and that what we've got to do and what he's got to do is make sure that they understand that they are charged with going forward with the agenda, which he's had a pretty well set agenda in terms of public policies. We've got things pending in the immediate future, like City of Yes for Housing, where we've got a housing crisis, and he's got a lot of investment in a program that is very important for producing over 100,000 units, and which goes to the City Council in the next 2 months. That's the things that we've got to be focused on. How do we keep things going? How do we support the staff so that they don't lose confidence in their ability to press the agenda? And in the meantime, he's going to be dealing with his case and his situation. Mm-hmm. So the city, like I said before, the city does not depend on one person. We are a city of leaders. People who come here, people who grow up here. We're a city of leaders. So we're not dependent on this case, on this situation. I wish the best for the mayor. I think he has the intentions, good public policies. The business community, again, bought into him. They didn't know him personally, but they felt strongly that his policies were the right ones for this time. I still feel his policies are the right ones for this time in terms of the focus. And hopefully we'll be able to keep that focus, keep those things going. New York City will survive. But I feel for the people in the administration who have been working so hard and now see really what amounts to a potential tragedy.
The political class, meaning the elected officials, and we've been sort of keeping a tally, somewhat informal one, it'll probably become formalized over time. There are dozens of elected officials who are saying the mayor needs to step down. And I normally think of the political class as like, that's between you all. You can work that out among yourselves. But that could end up being decisive in this case, right?
I don't think the folks that are calling for his resignation from the political class are going to change the mayor's mind one way or the other, and it's going to be his decision. unless something extraordinary happens. So what he's going to do, I don't think is going to depend on what anybody in the political class is advising him.
Have you had a chance to talk with him yet?
I have not.
Okay. Before I let you go, we have about a minute left. How's the recovery coming generally from your standpoint?
Well, the recovery is more, almost more a social recovery. Our economy has been strong. It's been growing 2 to 4% since the election. We now have over $1 trillion economy. We're the biggest metropolitan economy in the world, aside from Tokyo. So people think, when people think recovery, they think, well, we were in a depression. We were not from an economic standpoint. We were in a depression in terms of the health crisis and everything that represents. We have an affordability crisis. We're now the third most expensive city in the world, tied with Geneva. We have obviously still public safety issues. The transnational gangs I was hearing about this week from the police department that have come in and hidden themselves among the migrants are a real threat. They were talking about how nobody should walk around with an open cell phone because they can take your bank account when they get your phone if it's open. So we've got a lot of big issues. That's what we should be focused on. I think we all have to stand up. Like I said, we're a city of leaders. We've all got to stand up. We've got to work with the city agencies, which will remain stable and strong and keep going. So I'm very confident. There are a lot of good people in this administration, and we should all be supporting them and working with them.
Okay. Thank you very much, Kathy Wild. We're going to take a short break now, and when we come back, I'll talk more about Mayor Adams' indictment and what comes next for City Hall when I'm joined by the Public Advocate. Jumaane Williams will be live in studio with me in 2 minutes. Stay with us. Welcome back to this special edition of Inside City Hall. As Mayor Adams resists calls to resign after being indicted on federal corruption and bribery charges, one city official is preparing for a different scenario. Our public advocate, Jumaane Williams, would be next in the line of succession to take over as mayor if Eric Adams were to resign. He joins me now in studio. Always love to see you, but I wish it was under happier circumstances.
The same.
Where were you when you learned of all of this? This sort of broke last night and into this morning.
Yeah, I was probably at home with my family, you know, making sure the kids are in bed and stuff, and this stuff breaks. And it's sad. This is a really painful time for the city. It's hard to watch, particularly when it's people you know, associated with people you know. And so we're really just trying to focus now to make sure that the city knows that, you know, the garbage is going to get picked up, 301 is going to be answered, 911 is going to be answered. It's really important to try to work with our colleagues and our amazing public sector workers to just kind of try our best to restore trust to New Yorkers.
As all of this was breaking last night, I saw that you canceled today's schedule. What have you been doing today?
We've been having a lot of meetings. You know, you always know that this scenario can occur, and you do the basic preps for it. But I think, you know, you want to make sure that you have everything as much as possible lined up for every eventuality. It's not an eventuality you want, and it's not something you're pushing for. But you got to make sure that you're prepared for whatever may come. And we also want to just talk to colleagues to see how best we can get New Yorkers to understand that the city government is going to continue to operate. We're in a bit of a strange spot right now, but we're going to do everything possible to restore trust that's being eroded.
Is there a briefing book or a checklist or some set of procedures, you know, that you would activate in case you needed to step in as mayor?
Well, the charter obviously provides for what comes next, and it's up to us to kind of create that checklist. And so you don't want to get caught off guard. And so we spend some time trying to figure out that checklist is created and filled out. Mm-hmm. And so you want to do that at the same time as you have an eventuality that may never happen. And you want to just make sure you have all your bases covered.
Right, so you would be required to be installed and acting as mayor fairly quickly, within a matter of hours. Actually, And then there'd be an election within 90 days to get a permanent replacement for a mayor. This is all hypothetical, but it's real. As you said, you have to think it through. Would you be a candidate in a 90-day sprint if there was a vacancy?
That is so far ahead. And, you know, I always want to make it clear, as, you know, someone who's worked on criminal legal reform, the presumption of innocence is really tantamount, and we can't let that go. We can't just, depending who it is. So, you know, the federal government has the duty to try to prove a case. I think the mayor has a duty to try to say that I have a plan, not just in personal capacity, but in a way to regain trust. And I think that window's closing really rapidly, and I hope there's something there. So we're really focused on the eventualities and being ready and making sure that we're able to communicate as quickly as possible that the government's going to continue and folks are okay.
What the mayor has said so far is that he believes it's possible retribution because of his criticism of the Biden administration. He said last night in a videotaped statement that this is all the result of lies and so forth, and that he'll be vindicated. When you say the window is closing, it sounds like that's either not enough or you're not necessarily buying those explanations.
I think the time for deflection is over now. It's really time to try your best to let New Yorkers know how you can continue to govern and really take a deep reflection and show that you can not only still govern under the weight of this, but also restore the trust that is really important. And he's the only one that can really answer those questions. But we do know from what we see, it's really tough. These are egregious charges, really tough charges, and under any circumstances, and trying to run a city makes it even more difficult.
There are only 3 of you who occupy a citywide office. There are only a handful of people who have ever run those kind of campaigns successfully. To the extent that you look at what's in the indictment and so forth, is there a scenario or is there a version of the facts where there's a perfectly innocent explanation for these kind of things, taking a trip and, you know, not necessarily reporting all of it, which is what the indictment alleges?
You know, the breadth of this, the length of time, was actually pretty surprising to me. I didn't expect to see all this. It's, you know, from looking at it, you know, how do you explain it all? I don't know the answer to that, but the presumption of innocence is really a tantamount thing in how we operate. And I don't want to lose that. And I want to focus on the criteria we're setting. Like, the mayor just needs to ask himself the question of, can you continue to govern, and can you help restore trust? And I want to make sure that in any eventuality, New Yorkers know that our government is going to continue to work, and we have an amazing public sector workforce to make sure that happens as well.
The mayor says often, sometimes he says it indirectly, sometimes he says it more directly, depending on the crowd that he's in front of, that some of this is happening to him because he's the second black mayor. What's your take on that?
You know, I always think there are multiple truths that can happen at the same time. And so I believe if you are a black elected official, if you're a woman elected official, a Latino elected official, you may actually be treated differently based on historical things that have occurred. And you can make bad decisions. And both of those things can be true at the same time. And one doesn't preclude the other. And so I'll say that in terms of that question. And I'll also say, based on what was laid out, and it seemed to be laid out pretty thoroughly, there's some really concerning charges there. They're very serious. And if there's a defense to it, then I think that's going to take a lot of time to build forward. But we all should be really concerned about what was there. It's pretty egregious charges, and multiple ones. And you could say that at the same time as that goes in the same vein as the presumption of innocence, and you have a right to defend yourself.
Yeah, I mean, separate and apart from his legal rights, his legal strategy, you know, his legal posture, whatever it is he's going to do in court, there is this question about government moving forward, as you mentioned. It requires a certain amount of cooperation and respect and regard among different partners in government. When I see dozens of elected officials saying, we think he should step down, it seems to me at some point it gets to be untenable, right?
It is, I think, untenable now, kind of. It's only getting worse by the day, which is why I say you have to quickly answer the questions. How are you going to govern with all this going on? How are you going to get the priorities moving forward with all these going on? And on top of that, are you confident that you can kind of restore the trust that's being broken? That's a difficult plan to be able to show. But I want to make sure that the mayor has an opportunity to show that. That window, I think, is rapidly closing, and things are getting worse by the day. And I'm hoping he's really doing a lot of soul searching, because New York City is important. I think he loves New York City, and I hope he makes the best decision for what's good for the city of New York.
There's a political question in our last minute that you and I have often talked about off camera, which is that this is a generational thing in a lot of ways. There are a lot of black public servants, elected officials, who all kind of came up together. Some were aides, some were activists like you. He was a cop. But people have spent decades trying to serve the public. And as a group, people have really found their way into magnificent positions in a lot of cases, as the mayor and the state attorney general and the minority leader in the House of Representatives and the public advocate and so forth and so on. It feels a little deflating to sort of see that large generational project maybe going off course in this case.
I want to make sure that, when folks get into this office, we are trying to change the way things are done, not just replicate the way they have been done with a new set of folks. And so I always say that on a host of things, the way things operate, policies. It is hard to watch, particularly the second black mayor and a whole host of leaders there. And I think there is people who are going to have to pay for that come after. And I'm very concerned about that. And that's why I'm concerned about some of the reasons that the mayor's laying out. I think they can be even more harmful. But I will say this, I am glad that there is more diversity than there was before. And so there are a lot of us who are still in some really good positions that can really coalesce regardless of the eventuality and show New Yorkers that government can still run and government will still run.
Okay, well, we will let you get back to it. Best of luck. Stay in touch with us. We'll all be watching this together. Thanks a whole lot.
Absolutely. Peace.
Okay. We're going to take a quick break now. Don't go anywhere. Our special coverage continues with a live report from Washington, D.C., where we got reaction from members of Congress. Stay with us. Welcome back to this special edition of Inside City Hall. The fallout from the federal charges against Mayor Eric Adams have reached Capitol Hill. Some New York Democrats say that he should resign, but the two most powerful New York Democrats in Congress are not saying that. Kevin Fry in our Washington, D.C. bureau chased down lawmakers all day, and he joins us now with what he was able to find. Good evening, Kevin.
Yeah, we had at least one more lawmaker all but call on Adams to go. This is there are also questions about what the ripple effects of this could be come Election Day in just a few weeks.
He can't conduct the business of the people of New York. He knows that.
Congresswoman Nydia Velázquez calling it a sad day for the people of New York City, just moments after the Justice Department unsealed a 5-count indictment against Mayor Eric Adams. Should he resign?
If I was in his shoes, I would have resigned today.
Adams pledged to fight the charges and suggested he's being politically targeted for speaking out against President Joe Biden's policies on the border and migrants. That drew a rebuke from Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She called Adams' comments right out of the Donald Trump playbook.
Lobbing an accusation that this is somehow a politically motivated indictment is conspiratorial. I think it is deeply beneath the office, and it is deeply insulting to the Southern District of New York to insinuate that they lack the independence and are politically weaponized.
On Wednesday, Ocasio-Cortez called for Adams to resign. On Thursday, other prominent New York Democrats on Capitol Hill stopped short of that. Senator Chuck Schumer and Congressman Hakeem Jeffries both called the indictment serious, but did not publicly call on the mayor to step down. And Representative Richie Torres told us this.
I'm going to read the indictment, and once I've read the indictment, I'm going to render a judgment about the mayor's future.
The indictment comes at a critical time in New York politics. Competitive congressional districts in the city's suburbs could decide whether Democrats or Republicans control the U.S. House come next year. In 2022, the state's bail reform laws and stories about crime in New York are credited with helping Republicans win several of those suburban and exurban seats. In a statement Thursday, Republican Congresswoman Elise Stefanik, an outspoken ally of Trump who faces his own stack of indictments, said, quote, New York Democrats will pay the price for this corruption and incompetence in November, and Republicans will sweep this November. But Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, who is helping to lead an effort by Democrats to flip Republican-held seats across the state, argued the charges against Adams would not affect voters.
I don't think they'll get distracted by allegations about one person in New York City who looks like he's got a lot of issues that have to be ironed out. So I think it's a bit much bigger than that. I think it's much more about voters' lives.
Election Day is now just over a month away. And perhaps just underscoring this idea that Adams is only ripping from the Trump playbook, as Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez argued today. Here is what Trump said about Eric Adams' predicament.
He talked about how the illegal migrants are hurting our city and the federal government should pay us and we shouldn't have to take them. And I said, you know what? He'll be indicted within a year, and I was exactly right, because that's what we have. We have people that use the Justice Department and the FBI at levels that have never been seen before. So I wish him luck. I don't know anything about what he did.
So the weaponization argument from Trump. At the same time, we're also hearing from President Joe Biden. He was asked by reporters today if he believes that Adams should resign. His response, perhaps indicative of a bit of senioritis, was, I don't know. Errol?
All right. Thanks very much, Kevin. Since November of last year, Mayor Adams has continued to stand his ground and defend himself throughout an investigation. Let's look back at some of those moments.
Any inquiry that is done, we're going to fully participate. I have full confidence in her. She will stay with the campaign team. I would love to have her. I would be shocked if someone states that our campaign coordinated in illegal behavior. We are fully cooperating. We follow the law. So I can become a better mayor by having a global view. Because New York City is an international city. And so someone wrote an article and said Eric went to 80 Turkish events. I must have went to 300 African events. We follow all reporting requirements. Brianna, she's no longer doing fundraising.
I think you're going to be indicted.
You guys want to create a narrative, and that narrative is not a reality. First of all, your question was a stupid one, okay? A lot of people were not expecting that. You were expecting it. We're already giving money through the campaign's finance. I don't want to raise money. I don't want to spend hours raising money. These investigations, they raise a lot of questions and a lot of concerns. And the investigations will take care of themselves. And that is not where my time is going to be consumed.
Well, the time is now being consumed because Adams now faces 5 federal charges. Joining me now to break down those charges is a panel of legal experts. Jeremy Saland is a former Manhattan District Attorney, and Jerry Goldfeder is an election law attorney. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here. We only have a few minutes, but Jeremy, walk us through criminal procedure. What happens tomorrow when the mayor goes in to be arraigned?
I mean, this is pretty mundane is the appropriate term. It's no different than any other case. Sometimes there's a conversation in advance to figure out whether or not there's going to be any pretrial detention, any type of money that's going to be put, not money, but bail. It's not like the state system where there'd be cash. Fingerprinting, similar. Potentially a mugshot, go before a judge, plead not guilty. Will the passport be surrendered? We don't want you to go to Turkey. We don't want you to go travel out of the country. Well, the magistrate could say, you know, you're going to have to stay in this district, the Southern District of New York. Likely not, because we would expect that the mayor does need to travel to D.C., to Albany, has responsibilities, but to keep an eye on him. So I think it should be fairly quick and fairly straightforward, and then we're going to start to see the discovery as we move this, as the counsel has said, for a quick trial, which theoretically could be in 70 days, theoretically.
A lot of politicians.
The judge has been assigned to this case is Judge Dale Ho, who used to be the voting rights expert at the ACLU. He knows a lot about campaign finance.
Well, yeah, I was going to ask you about that. When the mayor says he's disclosed everything, well, the indictment says, no, here's a whole bunch of benefits that you got that you never filed in your conflict of interest board of filings. A lot of people call attorneys like you because they get in this kind of trouble. Why is non-disclosure considered a felony, a federal crime?
Well, it's non-disclosure because he was getting favors. That's the allegation. He was being bribed, and he was getting cash and good value that ordinary people don't get. And of course he wasn't going to disclose that because it's illegal. And the straw donor scheme also, of course, was not disclosed because that's illegal. And he knew both of those things were illegal if we are to believe the narrative in the indictment.
Mm-hmm.
After all, it's only one side of the story.
Right.
And everybody is looking forward to hear what he says, what his side of the story is. And there's only two people who can change the situation, really, Eric Adams and Kathy Hochul. We don't have recall in the state of New York like they do in California and other cases, other states. So really, it's up to him either to make his case or perhaps be removed.
When we see that as a sitting official, he was getting lots of, over $100,000 worth, according to the indictment, of free travel and luxury hotel stays and so forth. Does he need to do something in return for that to constitute bribery?
Well, from out of the outset, certain people can't donate that money or contribute that money to his campaign. So you can't have Turkish nationals doing that. There's nothing wrong in and of itself from a Turkish national or the nation of Turkey to want to work with the state of New York to find something that works for us both, and the city of New York for the an advantage to both. But it can't be the advantage and the benefit of the individual mayor as a person. Mm-hmm. That's one of the reasons why he runs afoul. But to your point just moments ago, whether or not he benefited, you can't have straw men to get these 8 times the monies for your campaign, and you can't have that foreign national donating or contributing. So out of the gate, there's the crimes right there.
It's actually a combination. It's straw men, and also where that money really comes from is from foreigners.
Sure.
So that's 2 violations, 2 really critical violations.
Some of it was through corporations. It was like triple dirty money.
Actually, you're right about that.
Yeah,
that's right.
But Jeremy, when you saw Attorney Spiro, the mayor's attorney, making the case in front of Gracie Mansion, evaluate that as a strategy. I'm used to you guys telling your clients, just shut up and let me do the talking, and I'm going to say as little as possible.
Well, I think he's doing a better job than what happened with Trump, where Trump went on this, they're coming after me, because that's really the angle that the mayor has. They're coming after me. It's, he used race, he used retribution, it's lies, it's because I stood up to the Department of Justice or the president. But unfortunately, I think Alex Sparrow went down that road a little bit too much himself. They're tarnishing him. They're making a spectacle of the FBI by showing up when we would have surrendered it. You know what? If there are other emails, which he referenced, then show those emails. And by the way, you've not had weeks or months. You've had a good year or so to show those emails and have those conversations. Mm-hmm. He's a competent, strong attorney, make no mistake. But this is not about following that showboating, if you will, outside the courtroom, where I thought, frankly, the mayor looked a little glib during that conversation and that communication. Fight it in the courtroom. Show the evidence. Do your job.
Right.
And Jumaane is right. The door is closing. Eric Adams needs to do his counter-narrative to try to demonstrate his innocence as quickly as possible. The voters of New York really demand that. We need stability. We need continuity. And if he's not able to do that, I think the governor is going to act.
But you don't make that narrative any stronger if your defense is they're coming after me because of me.
That's right.
Department. That shows me you don't have a defense. Get in that courtroom, do your job.
Political argument and legal argument not necessarily aligned in this case. Thank you both so much, gentlemen. Very
Always
good to talk with you.
Good to see you as well.
That is going to do it for tonight's show. Keep it right here at New York One for continuing coverage of this historic indictment of Mayor Adams. Thanks so much for watching and have a great evening. And we'll see you next time inside City Hall. Thank you for watching our YouTube channel. Let Spectrum News be your resource for balanced, in-depth political coverage, and click the subscribe button right here. You can also download our app or watch us on TV to learn more about the candidates, where they stand on the issues, and more. We'll see you then.